Good morning and welcome to Focus on the News. We have John Tigas here with us. John, welcome.
Good to be here.
Well, I think it's a good day for us. What do you think?
It's looking dreary outside, but I think it's a reflection potentially of just all the Democrats right now, because it seems like they're starting to feel pretty uneasy about what's coming in 8 days. What do you make of the sentiment right now from what you see?
Yeah, I read all of the liberal stuff, the mainstream stuff. The Washington Post, New York Times, a lot of the liberal blogs, because you pick up a lot of the tone, the mood of the left. And here's one out of NBC News. And the article says Democratic strategists are agonizing about headwinds in the closing stretch of the 22 campaign, with some fearing that the election will be worse for the party than the polls indicate. And we know the polls tend to always do this, where they try to put on a good face for the Democrats, and then the whole thing starts to collapse at the end. They say, okay, we can't keep up the facade, and the poll numbers come down. So the Cook political report just shifted the odds of a GOP gain in the House. They had said 10 to 20 seats. Now they're saying 12 to 25 seats. I have a feeling it's going to be a much bigger blowout than that. But here's something from Sean McElvey, executive director for the Democratic affiliated polling firm Data for Progress. And this is a quote from him. He says, "There's concern that the situation will deteriorate. You're probably going to see polls worsen, and it's possible Democrats underperform those polls as well." In other words, not only will the polls get worse for the Democrats, but then they're going to underperform from there. So I think we're looking at terrific prospects for the elections coming up.
So what do you make of those that are like not so fast? A lot of things haven't been fixed since 2020. How do you encourage folks in the midst of that to say my vote counts and I should continue to go to the polls?
Well, because this year the Democrats are so deflated. If you think of it, there are three big issues, and you can tie them in with other issues, but crime, inflation, and the perversion in the public schools. Those things affect everybody. They don't just affect Republicans, they affect independents, they affect Democrats. And so the Democrats are deflated because they know that on each of those issues, the Democrats set out to deliberately cause an increase in crime. That wasn't just some accident. They deliberately caused an increase in crime. They deliberately caused the sexual perversion and the racial upheavals taking place in the public schools. And they deliberately just printed money like there was no tomorrow. They shut down the entire economy of the United States for a year, shut the churches, shut the businesses. And so what inspires you as a Democrat? Even if you have a lot of weird ideas, you're looking around and boy, nobody likes anything that you're doing. So it's, even if you're talking about people who are out there stuffing the ballot boxes and writing out the fake ballots, even those people they're just not as uplifted as they are in some years. So if we're gonna pull it off, if we're gonna get control over the voting system so that we have fair and open elections, then we're going to have to win this one and then start to rebuild the country from that. And I think it's going to happen. I think we're going to pull it off.
Well, I appreciate your positive attitude. I know, a number. I just got done reading a book that dealt with the 2020 election, and they made a really interesting point that in the 6 swing states, there was 5 Republican-controlled legislatures after those elections, and not a lot was done to address some of the systematic concerns, not to mention the legal issues associated with a number of things that were done without legislative approval, which is by the Constitution. So let's hope that there is such an overwhelming. It's hard to believe in the current environment with the worst economy we've had since the awful 70s and the level of political corruption and, like you said, violence and everything else going on, that people wouldn't be activated to vote. And certainly if you're out there, no matter what your thoughts are, you have no hope if you don't vote. So definitely vote. One of the places I grew up in the Willamette Valley of Oregon, and in the 70s, that's where all the hippies went to. And from that point on, Oregon became a Democratic state. And yet, speaking of hope, the polls are showing that the Republican former, I guess she was GOP leader, Christine Drazan, is actually in the lead over the House Speaker, Democratic House Speaker, Tina Kotek. In fact, you even have Phil Knight of Nike fame supporting the Republican. In Oregon is been such an example of crazy nutso stuff, particularly Portland, and all the Antifa foolishness and burning down the city day after day. Well, maybe that's a great microcosm of what's really going on, where even the old hippies are finally saying, this ain't working out so well. Maybe we need to turn it back a little bit.
Yeah.
What do you think of that?
Well, they're saying now that in Oregon that they may end up electing a Republican governor for the first time in 40 years. Yeah. And you see this, there's some very important governor's races, and one of them out in Arizona is with Kari Lake, who is sort of a rising superstar. It's not clear to me just from her appearance. She may be Hispanic or something, but very, very, very nice looking young lady. And
exceptionally well spoken. Former broadcaster. Yeah. Some of the sharpest comebacks in interviews that I've ever seen in terms of controlling the narrative.
Yeah, she her opponent has refused to debate her. Democrats don't want debates, and she just knows, Kari Lake. It's not just that she's tremendously talented at being able to take complex issues, boil them down to simple terms that people can immediately understand, but she has such a wealth of material. The Democrats have just gone crazy. It's sort of like the Viking hordes that descended on places and just ravaged and burned and raped and did everything else. What on earth do you present if you're a Democrat and say, oh, well, look at this. We printed trillions and trillions of dollars. Yeah, and look at what it's done to inflation, and look what it's done to your stock portfolio if you're a little more well off. What's it done to your rent? What's it done to your gasoline costs? And it's just it really is. Here's something out of CNN. They said a dozen panicked top Democratic strategists and party leaders acknowledged to CNN, liberal CNN, that the party has largely failed to get voters to think of GOP candidates as as election deniers, and that's somehow a big deal. And it says what they haven't been able to do is to connect that concern with the really immediate concerns about the economy and rising costs. And I would add to what they said, or to the concerns about unbridled crime waves across the nation, perverts running the public schools, the collapsing borders, and really anything else that truly matters. There is nothing that the Democrats can tout and say, well, remember, we did this. Well, we did this to you.
No, you're right. They keep trying to use the January 6th insurrection narrative as a means that Republicans are coming for you, and it just most people aren't buying it. And then you got candidates like Fetterman up in Pennsylvania. They can't even, they make Joe Biden look like a rock star in terms of ability to string together a sentence. I mean, name a Democratic candidate that actually, you look at and you go, wow, that person really has it together. They just don't exist. They really are struggling to get quality candidates. And most of the folks that they're still touting, the Pelosi's and Schumer's and, people that are so old, and Bernie Sanders, and good God, I mean, a bunch of crazy people, most of them should already be in, retirement homes someplace. And that's what they got. And then you got, weird things coming out about Pelosi's husband now in this latest attack on him. I mean, it's nuts. So, and again, what did they try to do with the hammer attack? They tried to blame it on QAnon, and it turns out that the guy actually that did it is some Berkeley marijuana nudist guy who potentially has a whole lot of other interesting pasts associated with him. And what he was doing in let into Pelosi's home at 2 a.m. with, Secret Service security around. The whole thing doesn't make sense. And they keep trying to pull out this, it's, crazy MAGA Republicans. I just find it hard to believe, outside of the nut jobs that believe in the Bernie Sanders and Nancy Pelosi's of the world, that they actually are believing this stuff. People have to be opening their eyes and realizing how much they've been lied to at this point. And let's hope, as you said, that they flood the polls, that it's an overwhelming victory. And then B, that the candidates that are running are legit, bite the head off the snake people, because, even if they get elected and we have there's a Republican majority, that doesn't mean anything if we don't actually end up seeing people ready to have the courage and the conscience to fix the problems in Washington.
I think one of the things that's encouraging, whether someone is a Trump supporter or whether they have a different candidate in mind, the fact is that a tremendous portion of these people are people who really owe their success to Donald Trump. And in some cases, Donald Trump has had to swallow a little bit hard to deal with some of. But one of them, J.D. Vance out of Ohio, he is beginning to romp over his opponent in that race. And J.D. Vance is he isn't even part of the McCain. Pelosi, all of those, he's not part of the war wagon. He says, hey, look, Ukraine war is none of our business. I don't care about Ukraine war. I care about the United States. That's pretty dramatic, that kind of a shift. That guy is going to be in the United States Senate. He is going to be working to draw us back from these crazy wars that we're fighting overseas. And I think there are a lot of people. Marjorie Taylor Greene, she's been going out, she's been campaigning. There are a lot more people who want Marjorie Taylor Greene to campaign for them than there are Democrats who want Joe Biden to campaign for them. So Marjorie Taylor Greene, she's becoming a rock star of the Republican Party, even though they tried to push her out because she's not for wars. She's clear-headed about voter fraud. She's clear-headed about January 6th. She's not swept up by all of the media propaganda. She's not intimidated by it. So you look at the character of this new class, and of course the old bulls will be trying to take them under wing and say, "Look, I'll tell you how this works. You just you take all of this money from all these arms manufacturers and pill pushers and you'll be fine, and you just get on board." And there'll be a few of them that go along with. But I'm going to tell you this: there's going to be a group of people who are just not going to go along to get along, and they're going to move the needle in a very positive direction. And they're not going to be listening to the old bulls, old corrupt Republican bulls who just are in it to line their pockets. So I think it's very exciting, and the interesting article. It's very long. I wouldn't recommend anybody reading it. I'm sorry, but this is an article out of the Hill, and it's kind of painfully long. But when they finally get down to the bottom line, the kernel that I take out of it, and this is a quote from the Hill, says Republicans are looking more and more likely to gain control of the Senate, and not by a small margin. The House has been locked in for them for over a year. Then they go on to say it may appear now to be a sudden change, but the real story of 2022 may end up not that the Democrats collapsed into a rout, but that they were always behind and the polls just missed it. Now, I will say that for people who really are into this stuff, they lay out their case very, very effectively and in enormous detail about the flaws in the polling. But the issue, and I've been telling various candidates in Virginia that I talk to and provide a little advice to, I've said there are three issues. Just always remember CIS: crime, inflation, schools. And the beauty of these issues is that they affect every voter regardless of party. And on every one of those issues, the Democrats deliberately and intentionally made the situation worse. And they did it because they just had such an unleashed hatred for the American people and for the American voters. It wasn't just, you can kind of understand somebody like old Jimmy Carter when he was in. I never felt any great antagonism towards him, but I did view him as just being a total incompetent buffoon. I mean, bless his heart, he'd make a good next door neighbor, but he had no business in the White House. These are different. These are much different people. These are people, they don't think like normal people. They don't have normal families. It's sort of like Paul Pelosi with his tete-a-tete with some dude who is a big gay rights type of guy, and the tabloids are going to have fun with that thing for years.
They've been having fun since Twitter went back to free speech. That's been a lot more revealed about that attack than I think Nancy Pelosi ever wanted out. But that's
I don't think this wasn't something that Nancy Pelosi planned as an October surprise. This thing just happened, but she happens to have a husband who has some strange proclivities, and he needs some folks to share them with, and so I mean,
with hammers,
yeah, I don't
strange
know what
shaped
I don't know what
hammers.
the
Yeah.
hammer was about, but you know, it's interesting. You know, they tried to portray it as this MAGA guy. He broke into the house and he was after Nancy Pelosi. Well, it's not entirely clear that he said anything about Nancy Pelosi, but um, it, the police response was within 2 minutes. Now, I'm going to tell you, just before this, just for the fun of it, I just held my breath, and without being uncomfortable, but I held it for a minute and 10 seconds. And I think for a young, athletic, physically fit guy like yourself, 2 minutes is not, well, 2 minutes is not an unusual period of time for somebody to hold their breath. So to put it in perspective, imagine you call the police, whoever takes the call has got to convey that to the police officers, and they are physically at your door. All of this has taken place in the time that you can hold your breath in a single breath. It's the idea that somehow, they were out there and they were undefended. The Pelosi household is defended like Fort Knox. It's got everything, and these are uber wealthy, mega millionaires. He's wheeling, dealing in the stock market, and there are lots of rumors about some of the things he does in conjunction with information he receives from what's going on the inside. Anyway, they don't have any problem funding all the security. They can have a small army of Blackwater operatives scouting the neighborhood for three miles around if they want. The rumors are that this fellow was admitted to the House, and that things were taking place in the household that you might not want your little children to behold. And so, I mean, it's the tabloids are going to make a fortune on this story as it comes out. And I think Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats were really just trying to do spin control by saying, okay, this weird thing has happened at the Pelosi household.
Well, and suddenly at 2 a.m, this guy came up with brand new websites with QAnon conspiracies just magically at the same time.
Oh, he came up with it.
Oh yeah, no, he has new website inputs at 2 a.m. The whole thing doesn't make sense, but that's just it. I think you're hitting on it. At some point, people finally go, my God, this is just too wacko crazy. These people are doing nothing but lying to us. We got to go in another direction, even if I'm a lifelong Democrat. You were talking about CIS, the crime. I'm sorry, what was the I part? Inflation in schools. Tucker on his morning program, his Fox Today program, he had someone on by name of Nate Hochman. He's a 23 or 24-year-old writer for the New Republic. Fascinating, really bright kid. He's actually from Oregon, but he transferred out of being a kind of like a lot of people in Oregon. He was actually in, I think it was Colorado, I can't remember, Colorado College, I think it's called, in Colorado Springs, a left-wing small school. And he finally woke up to realize that everything he was being told was crazy, and he became a conservative over the last few years, and now writes the New Republic. But Tucker was asking him about what's going on with the young people, what's causing young people to turn conservative. And it was really interesting because he said, Tucker said, when I was in the 80s, it was all, about, foreign policy and economics. And this kid was saying, no, it's all about the culture. People are looking around and realizing that the culture is warped and perverted, and that something has to be done, or we don't have anything left to conserve. And I find that really interesting because the JD Vances, as you noted, they're not out of the traditional Republican Party. I mean, JD Vance is everything but that. You know, he went to Harvard even, but he came out of Appalachia before that. I mean, his story is fascinating, and the same thing that you see, you know, out in Arizona with Blake Masters. We're seeing the most interesting candidates coming out of a very different non-foreign policy, war, economics, free trade. And they really are looking at these issues, these moral issues in our society and saying, if we don't fix this, it's over. And those candidates, the Marjorie Taylor Greens, the JD Vances, those are the ones that are getting the greatest interest. Even Tulsi Gabbard, who used to be a Democrat, probably speaks stronger on those issues than 95% of current elected Republicans. Those are the people, interestingly enough, that seem to really getting support and are striking a chord with people. Do you think that the regular population is recognizing that as well?
Yes, I think I think the movement to reform schools is sort of a good barometer of public disenchantment with sexual perversion. And if you look at it across America, and this even extends into fairly rural communities, you have a combination of sexual perverts and these sort of Black America or Black Lives Matter, Antifa leaning teachers who are racist. They believe in this Marxist critical race theory, and you also have the public school librarians who are just open advocates for sexual perversion, pornography, making sure that the smallest children can receive pornographic material and be groomed to be more receptive to sexual advances by homosexual pedophiles. And I think it's the problem for the Democrats. This stuff has always been deep in the fabric of the party, but by winning all three branches of government, they just sort of unleashed, and they, you know, it was an echo chamber where each one would say, hey, look, we'll do this. Wouldn't this be great? And they're, by censoring social media and also censoring the mainstream media, there was no pushback that was apparent because they silenced all the critics. Twitter went so far as to censor and block the president of the United States from communicating with the public. And of course, now the Twitter clan, they're being purged by Elon Musk, who's just taken over. And they say the first adjustment to their personnel is to fire a third. And it looks like they're going to be 3/3, and he'll start with this, or not 3/3, but there's 70% that he's talked about getting rid of, and he's going to put it into 3 blocks, is my guess. But anyway, the first one is a total elimination of a third of the entire workforce at Twitter. And these are the censors. He's getting rid of the censors who will block you and me for talking about what's going on with COVID and the tremendous number of people dying of COVID shots, the ridiculousness of wearing masks when they don't slow the spread or stop the spread or do anything. All of this was censored, and because of that, it just gave the Democrats the feeling that they had this godlike power to do whatever they want. They knew that there was a lot of voter fraud. They thought, you know, that would carry them. But at this point, they can't even inspire the fraudsters to get out and manufacture enough fake ballots to win elections, and so the whole thing has come crumbling down. And I think at the core of it, leadership has a lot to do with it. And when leadership stands up and says, look, what are we doing teaching little children that boys are girls and girls are boys? That it's, first of all, it's irrational, and second of all, it's immoral.
Yeah.
And the common, the guy swinging a hammer for a living, the guy driving the bulldozer, the fellow who's mowing the lawn, the waitress taking the orders, they stop and they say, you know what? I agree with that guy on the screen. That's right. That's really icky stuff, and I'm glad somebody's speaking out against it.
Mm-hmm.
I think that is coming, and I think the ball is rolling, and I'm excited about it. I can't tell you how much fun we're going to have on election night. I think it's going to be a great night, and
I'm bringing my heart medicine. I'm still waiting for that 2 a.m. spike. We'll see what happens. Speaking of that, I'm out on Wednesday. I'll be on an airplane flying Wednesday. So my last word to audience out there, definitely vote. You don't have no hope if you don't go to the polls. But if they've been given a mail-in ballot, bring it with you unopened, sealed. And if for some reason you find out, like a lot of people did the last election, that someone had already voted in your place, dial 911 and file a identity theft right then and there. And what that does is it allows your local sheriff to actually investigate what's going on behind the scenes in the election, because that's been the big problem. So many people have tried to find out what happened, try to do audits, and they couldn't do it because of all the crazy rules and lockdowns. And then now all the votes from the last election have been destroyed. So that gives an opening to actually do a full-blown investigation. So do that. Make sure you bring your unopened mail-in ballot with you and file 911, file an identity theft right then and there with the sheriff. And you're going to open the door to figure out what happened if something like that does happen. And unfortunately, that happened way, way, way too much in the last go round. That's my final word on election. I'll be back hopefully in time. Actually, excuse me, I will be back before on Monday. You're allowing me to roll in from Vegas. I'm going to be at the Trump Hotel in Vegas for a convention. So I'll be looking forward to seeing hopefully celebrations at the Trump Hotel on Tuesday night next week.
Well, that's going to be an exciting thing. And I know I'm going to tell you, for Donald Trump and for all of his supporters, this is going to be a stunningly exciting night. I think there's going to be a lot of very positive things that'll come out, and so it's good to see after we put up. People have dealt with this. They've been chased through the streets by BLM, Antifa inspired mobs. Hundreds of police officers being gunned down, murdered by people inspired by BLM. A lot of poor Black people, good, decent people in the inner cities have had to stand there while they watch these mobs torch their places of work, their banks, their grocery stores, their drug stores. They see all these smash and grab mobsters coming in and forcing Wawa and all of these other convenience stores and other stores to shut down and to flee the Black neighborhoods because of the crime. People in those communities suffer more from this racial violence than anybody else. And if you are a single Black mother trying to raise some children, and you got bullets flying through your house just at random, not because your kids are involved in something, but just at night, the gunfire starts going off because Democrat politicians have decided that they want to cater to the most radical groups, the groups that can falsify ballots for them in those communities. You do not want that to continue. For people like us, we're very concerned about crime, but nobody's shooting through our windows, at least not yet. We're hoping it doesn't come closer. But for those people, I remember when I was building houses in Liberty City, Miami. It was a very, very a tough neighborhood. It was a tough, violent neighborhood. And I was walking this very nice black woman she had 2 children, just single mom. And I was turning over the keys to the house to her, having the final inspection. And I just recall the moment, because I liked her, we'd worked together, trying to arrange the sale, heavily government subsidized home. And as I was walking through the neighborhood, I thought, boy, I hope this lady has a gun, because this was I sold a couple houses, just, short walk away from this one. And within the same week that we closed on the houses, both of the owners called and they said, "Oh, do you have any of that siding, Mr. Black?" I said, "There's something wrong with the siding." I said, "Look," I said, you don't have to buy anything." I said, if there is something wrong with that house, everything is under warranty. You don't have to worry. We're going to make it right. And they said, no, you don't understand. We got bullet holes. And within a week, these people, and I remember one guy's name, Willie Smith, nice guy. And I just feel sorry for people like that. And the Democrat politicians inspire the crime. They inspire the racial hatred, because that's how they get the votes. That's how they can get people to make up the fake ballots and that kind of thing. So anyway, everybody is suffering from Democrat leadership. Everybody, every race, every religion, every group of people, rich, poor, everybody's suffering. The Democrats did it, and we're going to stop them. And we're going to stop them, I think, on November the 8th.
All right. Well, we're way past our normal stopping point. We got you talking about bad politicians, and you couldn't stop. So
okay. Well, listen, we're gonna sign off. We will see you again on Wednesday at 11, and so join us again for Focus on the News. Thank you very much.